Right now on Morning News Now, tariff tussle. Today, President Trump prepares to host Canada's new prime minister at the White House as the relationship between the U.S. and its neighbor to the north feels the pressure from Trump's trade war, why the president looks poised to make a deal. Plus, the administration offers new financial incentive to get undocumented immigrants to deport themselves. We'll take a look at the terms. Next, extreme delays, the growing frustration at Newark Airport, where the travel nightmare is still not over this morning. We'll hear from some stressed out passengers who've been stranded for hours.
Suddenly my flight was canceled on me, and they're telling me that I can't get my money back. I can't get a hotel. I can't do anything.
We'll tell you what the federal government says it's doing about it. Later this hour, escalation in Gaza. Israel announces plans to ramp up military operations against Hamas as its cabinet approves a plan to seize the entire Gaza Strip. It comes as the enclave faces a catastrophic food shortage after a 2-month blockade on aid. We'll have the latest on Israel's plans and President Trump's upcoming trip to the region. And finally, countdown to the Conclave. We're live at the Vatican with an inside look at the College of Cardinals as it prepares to take part in the ancient tradition of electing the next leader of the Catholic Church.
That'll be something exciting to look forward to, where we are like, is it white smoke? Is it dark smoke? It's usually pretty clear, but we'll find out. Good to have you with us this morning. I'm Joe Fryer.
And I'm Christine Romans. I'm in for Savannah this morning. We begin our show at the White House, where Canada's Prime Minister Mark Carney set for a high-stakes meeting with President Trump later this morning amid strained relations with our neighbor to the north.
It is the first in-person meeting between the two leaders. Just last week, Carney and his party won a pivotal election in Canada. That victory was spurred in part by anti-American sentiment that has swept Canada in the wake of President Trump's trade tariffs, not to mention those repeated threats to try and make Canada the 51st state. Yesterday, President Trump offered this preview of today's meeting.
He's coming to see me. I'm not sure what he wants to see me about, but I guess he wants to make a deal. Everybody does. They all want to make a deal because we have something that they all want.
NBC News White House correspondent Vaughn Hilliard joins us now from Washington. So, Vaughn, we know these tariffs are really driving a wedge between the two nations. What can we expect in this meeting, and how much will trade dominate the agenda?
Right. The president's words, "I am not sure what he's coming to see me about," are quite striking, because it is very clear over the course of these last months why Canada's interest for their new prime minister, Mark Carney, to come to the White House would be of such high interest to the Canadian government and Canadians across their country. Because the United States, when you look at this moment in history, the United States and this White House are disrupting the long-standing free trade allyship that these two neighboring countries have long held. The President of the United States implementing a series of tariffs, rolling some back, but implementing others on non-USMCA compliant products that Canada seeks to ship into the United States. Let's be clear. Canada sends 3/4 of their exports to the United States specifically, and they see the President of the United States, who has effectively goaded them in suggesting that they should be the 51st state of the United States. They watched Justin Trudeau, the previous prime minister, step down from his role after unsuccessfully trying to build a close relationship with the president back in November, after then candidate Trump won the election. So really, this is going to be an important moment for the Canadians and the White House. Mark Carney, after winning his position as prime minister, made it clear that Canada will no longer stand up to the, quote, betrayal of the United States.
And Vaughn, in other news, the Trump administration says it's going to pay undocumented migrants $1,000 to self-deport, in addition to providing travel assistance. What can you tell us about those plans and how that would work?
Right. The exact specifics and details of how they would actually authenticate whether somebody has, quote, self-deported are not clear. But the Department of Homeland Security indicating to undocumented individuals in the United States that they can use the ZBP Home app through the Customs and Border Patrol system to indicate to the U.S. government that they have since self-deported back to their home country, and that they will then in turn be paid $1,000. Again, the exact specifics of how they prove that to the U.S. government are not clear here, but this falls in line with DHS's policies over the last months, urging undocumented individuals that it is their best interest to leave the United States and that it is most financially suitable for U.S. taxpayers to go about deportations through the self-deportation process.
So, Vaughn, we also saw the president wants to reopen the infamous Alcatraz prison. He's calling it for it to be substantially enlarged and rebuilt. A reminder, it's an island. Right now, it's a tourist attraction. Are we getting any more insight into why he wants to do this? And just based on the reaction we've seen so far, is it realistic?
We know that the president wants to incarcerate more individuals in this country or deport more individuals in this country, and he has run into some headwinds through the courts as he has sought to send deportation flights of individuals who are not citizens in this country. And he has indicated that he wants to open Alcatraz, which we should know closed back in 1963, in large part due to the difficulty of sending resources from water and fuel, but also personnel to that island off of San Francisco. And so there are a lot of questions that this White House have not answered at this point in time. There's 17 high maximum security penitentiaries in the federal system at this point in time. But the Bureau of Prisons said that they will move forward with seeking how to best do that. Of course, there has been a lot of criticism over the last 24 hours about the cost that it would take to put forward such an effort to reopen that island.
When you're talking about waste, fraud, and abuse and trying to get rid of unnecessary spending in the federal government, and then you want to rehabilitate essentially an island that's ruined, a bunch of ruins, you know, that I can see where that criticism comes from. And Vaughn, finally, we're also following the story of the Justice Department asking a federal judge to dismiss a lawsuit that would restrict access to an abortion pill. What can you tell us about this? It looks like the Trump administration taking a similar stance to the Biden administration on this particular issue.
Right. You're right, Christine, taking the exact same stance as the Biden administration. This is over mifepristone here. This was a lawsuit that was filed by 3 Republican attorneys general against or I should say in the state of Texas through the federal court system in the Northern District of Texas. Now, we should be clear that the DOJ's filing to the courts were not about the basis of the actual lawsuit or the substance of whether Americans should have access to a mifepristone or abortion pills. Instead, they were arguing, like the Biden administration argued, that those 3 Republican attorneys general, none of whom were from the state of Texas, had no standing in the Northern Texas District court system. And so that is where the DOJ effectively seeking to punt on this big issue here, not so much on the substance, but on the basis of where this lawsuit was filed. That said, there's been a lot of questions as to whether President Trump would support access to abortion medication. And so for now, this is an issue that clearly he is not seeking to challenge to the Department of Justice, but one that potentially could come up in a different court system here in the future.
All right, Vaughn, thank you so much. A former Homeland Security official is speaking out after President Trump accused him of potentially treasonous conduct. As a senior official in the first Trump White House, Miles Taylor published an anonymous op-ed criticizing Mr. Trump. In it, he said the president, quote, lacked a moral compass. NBC News senior legal correspondent Laura Jarrett spoke with him exclusively and has this report.
People need to know how real it is to be blacklisted by the president.
For a brief moment, Miles Taylor was anonymous.
I got into government to serve my country.
Now he's anything but. The former Homeland Security official who once detailed his observations inside the first Trump administration in an anonymous op-ed, now accused of leaking classified information and treason in a presidential memorandum.
Did you ever knowingly disseminate classified information?
I know I've never broken the law. I know that I've assiduously upheld my national security obligations. You can't threaten Americans to not exercise their First Amendment rights because they're fearful the President of the United States will prosecute them.
The 38-year-old says he's now receiving a barrage of threats.
My wife has to read online about people saying that they'll put me in front of a firing squad. We were told by security experts to go update our last will and testament.
The president denies he's seeking revenge by directing investigations of his critics.
No, I just look at people, and I'm not directing anybody.
Do you believe that you are being investigated by the federal government?
I have seen indications that they are out there rummaging through my past. What I worry about is that they will try to use this tactic, this bludgeon of the bully pulpit of the presidency, to go shut people up.
Taylor's hired Abby Lowell, who's represented everyone from Hunter Biden to President Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner.
For the head of the executive branch of government to order, literally order, a criminal investigation is unprecedented.
When asked if a criminal investigation is underway, DOJ and Homeland Security declined to comment. But Lowell says he isn't waiting for an indictment.
I'm asking all those judges who are the guardrails of protecting the rights of citizens to be on the lookout for requests that come to get information against Miles or others.
Is what's happening now something you think that is unique to Miles Taylor?
I don't think it stops with Miles, but I think Miles is a good test case if the system works.
Laura Jarrett, NBC News.
All right, we're learning more detail about President Trump's plan to implement tariffs on movies that are produced in other countries.
Plus, Social Security beneficiaries may have to pay back the agency if they received too much money in benefits. A lot to cover. Lucky for us, as our senior business correspondent, Christine, is going to break it all down for us. So let's start with this movie thing, because yesterday we talked about this announcement that foreign films are going to be tariffed 100%. Now we're hearing actor Jon Voight. His manager says he's come forward with this plan to try and, increase domestic film and television production. Jon Voight, an award-winning actor over the years, but someone who probably isn't really in Hollywood circles these days because of his loyalty to Trump. What are we learning here?
So he's been talking to people in the industry. There is a problem. They've been losing production. They've been losing jobs. There have been big incentives overseas. So big film productions and TV productions have been filmed in a lot of other places, and they want to make Hollywood great again. And the president tapped him as a special ambassador. So he was out basically talking to stakeholders, and he presented the president with a slate of proposals, including incentives, federal incentives, other tweaks to the tax code, and in certain cases, limited tariffs. Now, you remember yesterday the president said he wanted 100% tariffs on any movie made overseas, and immediately Hollywood insiders who would like some relief and people who are following tariffs are like, how in the world do you tariff a movie? So the White House sort of stepping back a little bit. We'll see in the end what it finally looks like. But tariffing a movie, that's what the president says he wanted to do, but it's not exactly what Jon Voight and others are saying.
To be clear, this is an issue Hollywood wants addressed, but just a lot of people feel incentives are going to be the key to making it happen.
Absolutely.
Maybe not the tariffs. All right, let's talk about Social Security, because we have these people who are getting overpaid, and then how the Trump administration and the Social Security administration are responding to that, really getting a lot of attention.
So these are people who are on a fixed income. These are people who are getting a Social Security, either a disability check or a survivor's check, I believe, or their Social Security benefits. If they are overpaid, the Trump administration wanted to change and have 100% clawback, meaning the whole paycheck could come back to make the difference. And there was a hue and cry over that. A lot of people, especially seniors who are on disability, or seniors, they're not able to give up a whole check. So then the idea was, okay, maybe 50%. And there's still some concern that clawing that back to 50% still might be a hardship. So watch this space. If you are on Social Security and there's an overpayment, you may be, in the near term, responsible for a bigger chunk than you thought to pay back the government.
Let's talk about the Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent. He is set to testify today in front of the House Oversight Committee. Just yesterday, he was in Beverly Hills speaking at a major global investors conference. What are we hearing from him?
I'd say this guy's got the hardest job in Washington next to the Fed chief, Jerome Powell, right? I mean, there's so much happening here right now. He went to this conference and told these investors, look, I'm doubling down here on the Trump agenda. We're talking about tariffs, tax cuts, deregulation. We are going to make America an appealing place for you to do business, even more appealing. And there's some skepticism in that crowd, because tariffs and a trade war make it incredibly unappealing for so many of these investors and business owners who are just looking for clarity. They like the deregulation. They love the tax cuts. The tariff part of it has been a very hard sell to the investing community.
Oh, hear what he has to say today. All right. Thanks as always, Christine.
All right. For the second week in a row, major disruptions are causing travel nightmares for flyers at Newark International Airport. It all stems from what officials are calling a perfect storm brought on by equipment outages, runway construction, and air traffic controllers walking off the job at one point. Sarah Wallace from NBC New York spoke with frustrated passengers dealing with another round of delays and cancellations at Newark on Monday.
Lots of anxious looks at the board in every terminal at Newark Liberty Airport. We met a frustrated Dana Clark trying to get back to Fort Lauderdale. Her first delay coming into New Jersey was last week.
I was delayed getting in here on United, and I'm getting delayed getting out of here on JetBlue. I'm just a little annoyed because I've never been delayed so much in my life.
A mixed bag for Mary and Russ Rogers, who are heading back to Sarasota after a family weekend here. Their flight back is on time, but getting here, also a nightmare.
We were delayed, 6 hours coming here on Thursday. Yes, yeah. And we were going to a First Communion, and everybody was coming from 4 different cities. Everybody got delayed.
I can't believe that something like this could happen like this. You know what I mean? Better control of the airline.
Officials say the perfect storm at Newark was sparked by a walkout by FAA air traffic controllers, runway construction, and equipment outages due to outdated technology. The CEO of United announced it was canceling 35 round-trip flights daily. The Trump administration has said it's working on all of the issues, including solving a nationwide shortage of air traffic controllers. But Senator Chuck Schumer thinks there should be an independent investigation by the Office of the Inspector General.
To say that there is just minor turbulence at Newark Airport and the FAA, that would be the understatement of the year. We're here because the FAA is really a mess. This mess needs a real forensic look, a deep look into it.
The biggest frustration, flyers say, that they're kept in the dark until the last minute. This couple just arrived from Amsterdam, trying to connect to get home to Richmond, Virginia.
We found out when we were down in baggage claim.
And they said
that the flight, we looked at the United app and they said the flight had been canceled.
All the airlines, because we couldn't get on any other planes. So it must be affecting others too.
Our thanks to WNBC reporter Sarah Wallace for that report. The current shortages of air traffic controllers is affecting airports nationwide. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy now says he plans to roll out a strategy to help fill the 3,000 open positions across the country.
A tragic scene unfolded off the coast of San Diego on Monday. A suspected migrant smuggling boat capsized. At least 3 people died. Others were injured, and crews are still searching for other possible victims. NBC News correspondent Liz Kreutz reports.
A desperate search underway after authorities say a boat suspected to be smuggling a group of migrants capsized off the coast of San Diego, killing at least 3 people.
Possibly 5 to 8 patients all appear to be CPR status. Can you upgrade this to a major medical?
According to the Coast Guard, 4 others were taken to a local hospital, and multiple people are still believed to be missing, including 2 children.
We have a possibility of numerous patients that are missing at this point in the water.
The beat-up Panga boat was first spotted by construction workers just north of Torrey Pines State Beach. Several agencies responded with lifeguards on rescue boats and others walking the beach looking for any survivors.
We don't know the ages, but it was a mix of men and women on that boat.
Human smuggling off the Southern California coast has long been a dangerous and often deadly way for migrants to try to enter the U.S. Boats often launch from Mexico, sometimes charting hundreds of miles in the dead of night. Earlier this year in San Diego, drone video capturing a boat suspected of smuggling migrants crashing near shore, tossing passengers into the ocean. And in 2023, 8 people died when a boat believed to be carrying migrants also capsized.
It's a tragedy of the highest order that people have to do that.
Authorities have not said the nationalities of those on the boat, how many people they believe are still missing, and where exactly they believe that boat was coming from. Back to you.
All right, Liz, thank you.
All right, yesterday, meteorologist Michelle Grossman filled us in on that unusual large-scale omega block that's dominating the nation's weather pattern. Well, the omega block is not budging, which means they're looking at another day of stormy weather.
Sounds like a vitamin. All right, Michelle, what can you tell us about today?
It really does. Just not doing so much good for us, although it is going to help with the drought in portions of the Northeast. So, yeah, we're going to see that block continuing. It's just really a traffic jam in the atmosphere. So we're seeing that rain continuing in parts of the Northeast, parts of the Southwest, and then we're looking at those severe storms in the Southern Plains once again. We're starting out stormy early this morning in parts of the Southern Plains. We've been watching this for hours. We had those storms last night, yesterday evening, and they are continuing and will continue throughout this Tuesday. So notice as we look towards Texas Texas, New Mexico, Oklahoma. Some heavy rain is falling. That's where you're looking at those brighter returns, the reds, the oranges, the yellows. And we are also, we have a tornado watch in place because we have the ingredients in place for severe weather all throughout the day. It's soupy down there. We have a trigger mechanism, and we're going to see those storms igniting once again as we head throughout the afternoon and evening hours. You're looking at that lightning, hearing that thunder this morning. And as we go throughout the afternoon and evening hours, 20 million people at risk. So focusing on the yellow shading, the orange shading, those are the likeliest spots for seeing the stronger storms. And with any of these storms, we could see strong tornadoes. We could see large hail, 2 inches or greater. That causes damage on its own. So does winds gusting over 60 miles per hour. So we're looking at places like Dallas, Waco, Austin, Houston, Lake Charles, Lufkin, looking at severe weather as we head throughout the afternoon to evening hours. Now, a big concern will be the heavy rain as well. We're pulling this moisture off the Gulf, and we're going to see training storms in the same areas. So 21 million people under flood alerts stretching from New Mexico through Texas, Oklahoma, into portions of the lower Mississippi Valley. So through Mississippi, Jackson, Texarkana, Dallas, Oklahoma City, Roswell could see some flooding conditions. So we're talking about river flooding. We're also talking about flash flooding. Flash flooding when it comes quickly and then it recedes quickly, but it's dangerous. So as we look at the rainfall, we're looking at a lot of it. So where you see the yellows, the reds, the oranges, once again, those are the highest amounts of rain expected along Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, and we could see 8 inches of rain in some spots. That certainly will cause some problems. We're going to watch that closely as we go throughout the afternoon hours. Of course, Bill Cairns will be in later on this afternoon to track it throughout the afternoon and evening hours. Flood alerts also impacted in or on alert in the Northeast. We're looking at parts of New York City, into Connecticut, also Massachusetts, because we've had rain for days and days, and we're going to continue to see rain. And we're looking at additional rainfall on top of that saturated soil. That's why we're concerned about some flooding. Along the coast there in portions of New England, that's where we're expecting the likeliest amounts of higher rainfall amounts. But really, we're just stuck in that soggy conditions. It's going to help the drought in the long run, but in the meantime, we are concerned about some flooding. This is what it looks like. That area of low pressure sort of cut off, spinning that moisture in. So we're looking at that circulation in the Northeast, and we're looking at the chance for some stronger storms across the interior portions of New York, the interior parts of Pennsylvania later on today. And then look what happens tomorrow. Finally, that system starts to lift out, and we're going to see some lingering showers, especially along the New England coast, northern New England, but they're going to weaken in intensity, and then we're going to see it clear out by Thursday. Now, that blocking does continue, as I mentioned, but that's going to bring some impacts to the temperatures as well. So notice in the southwest where that area of low pressure is cut off, we're really below average for this time of year. Temperatures in the 50s, 50 degrees in Denver today. That's 17 degrees below what is typical for this time of year. But Minneapolis, 84, 17 degrees above average, looking good there, 78 degrees in Omaha. So feeling like summer in some spots, feeling soggy and cool in others. Back to you guys.
Air conditioners aren't used to working in early May in Minneapolis, so they're getting a little test there.
I know.
Thank you.
Michelle.
Yeah, you have to check in on your dad.
All right.
Sure.
In Los Angeles, a man was detained outside the home of actress Jennifer Aniston after a vehicle crashed into the front gate. That's according to 2 law enforcement sources. Those sources say it happened yesterday outside Aniston's Bel Air mansion and that the Friends star was home at the time but was not hurt. Those sources tell NBC News Aniston's private security team held the man, described as a middle-aged white male, until police arrived. Police have not yet offered any explanation as to why he crashed into the gate. Much more to come here on Morning News Now. Later this hour, speaking out. One of the creators of the beloved children's show Arthur is defending public television amid plans by the Trump administration to try to end federal funding. Mark Brown joins us live to explain why he says the cuts will impact rural families the most.
But up first, forceful entry. Gaza braces for Israel's coming military campaign after Israel's cabinet approves plans to capture the entire strip. We'll bring you the latest from the Middle East when we come back. All right, welcome back. In the latest news from the Middle East, Gaza is preparing for upcoming attacks after Israel announced plans for an intensive escalation in the Palestinian enclave.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said yesterday that Israel was, quote, on the eve of a forceful entry to Gaza. This comes after Israel's security cabinet approved a plan to seize all of the Gaza Strip. Right now, the UN says the area is facing catastrophic shortages of food and medicine as Israel's blockade on aid to Gaza now enters its 3rd month.
NBC News correspondent Hala Garani joins us now from Tel Aviv with more on this. Hala, good morning. Walk us through Israel's new offensive to seize Gaza.
Well, so this was a plan that was approved unanimously by the security cabinet in this country to explicitly say that they're going to reconquer Gaza and control aid distribution if there is no ceasefire deal that would lead to the release of hostages before President Trump's visit Gulf states. These are Arab Gulf states in the middle of next week. This would lead essentially to a forceful displacement of the population to the south, according to this plan, and for the IDF, through potentially foreign companies, to take control of aid distribution through certain hubs that would be located throughout the Strip. Now, this is leading humanitarian groups to say that this will cause yet more displacement, hunger, and misery for the civilians of Gaza. The Israeli government is saying that this is a way to place more pressure on Hamas to release the hostages. There are a couple of dozen remaining living hostages, we believe, in Gaza, and the bodies of several dozen others. But aid groups and Palestinians on the ground are saying essentially that this is not strategic, that this is political for the Netanyahu government, responding to the extreme right-wing members of his coalition in government here, who have said explicitly that they do not want this war to end and that they want to continue to seal off Gaza from humanitarian aid, Christine.
So, Hala, President Trump told reporters Monday the U.S. will try to help get food to the people of Gaza. Are we learning any more details about this plan and just his upcoming trip to the region?
Well, he said very briefly when he was asked, we're going to help the people of Gaza get food, but make sure Hamas doesn't siphon the supplies. Now, again, I have to go back to these humanitarian aid groups who've been working inside the Strip since October 7th. They say they have a tried and tested method of vetting aid that comes in and of distributing it to the people in need, and that they say that Hamas is not able to get its hands on some of these supplies and this aid, meaning that what they say is an excuse for the Israeli government to go in is not a valid explanation. But the president himself did not offer any specifics on how he believes that food could get to the people of Gaza. And as you mentioned in the intro, none has come in since March 2nd.
March 2nd. All right, Hala Garani, thank you so much for that.
At the Vatican, final preparations are underway for the start of tomorrow's papal conclave. 133 cardinals from all across the globe are now gathered. They've been meeting privately ahead of this ancient and highly secretive process, which will lead the Catholic Church to its new leader. NBC News correspondent Jay Gray is live at the Vatican with the very latest. Jay, good morning.
Hey there, good morning, Joe. And yeah, today the cardinal electors will check into their dorms at the Vatican. They'll surrender their phones, other electronics, cut off communication with the outside world on the eve of beginning the process to elect the new leader of their faith.
On the eve of the conclave, the magnitude of their decision weighs on the Catholic cardinals who will elect their new pope.
The problems that are in the world, for peace, for immigration, for freedom and for justice. There are so many things that need to be addressed.
Issues they've prayed about and discussed for more than a week following the funeral of Pope Francis. That time, a vital part of the process.
One of the most important times in the selection of a new pope, because this is the time that the cardinals get together and get to know each other. Some of them don't know each other very well. And so there's a lot of meetings.
Tomorrow, the meetings, the talks will end as they gather behind the locked doors of the Sistine Chapel.
Once it really starts, there will be 2 votes in the morning, 2 votes in the afternoon. And this is done in the Sistine Chapel in total silence, except for the counting of the votes.
Counting that continues until a 2/3 majority agrees on who will lead the world's largest Christian denomination with more than 1.4 billion members.
We will do what we can, knowing that God is with us and that we're here to make truth, justice, and charity.
Laying out a path for the future of their faith.
Look, so here's what we anticipate taking place tomorrow. There is a mass in the morning. The cardinal electors will take part in that. And then in the afternoon, they will file into the Sistine Chapel. Those giant wooden doors will be closed and locked. And at that point, Joe, Christine, we do expect at least one vote tomorrow. If no pope is elected, they come back and start the process again the next day.
All right, Jay, thank you so much.
All right, coming up, digital habits.
The connection between the way teens use social media and what it says about their well-being. We're going to look at new research and more in your weekly mental health check-in next. We are back with your weekly mental health check-in. Today we're taking a closer look at a controversial move by the Trump administration. It's canceling $1 billion in mental health grants designed to support students in the wake of school shootings.
Plus, a new study from Cambridge shows a stark difference in how teens with some mental health conditions use social media.
Joining us now to break down this week's mental health headlines, psychotherapist Dr. Robbie Ludwig. Dr. Robbie, always good to have you with us. So let's start with this decision.
Likewise.
To halt $1 billion in federal grants for student mental health services. This funding was passed after the Uvalde school shooting. I mean, research by the Washington Post has found hundreds of thousands of students in America have been exposed to a school shooting since Columbine. What kind of impact could losing this kind of support have?
So what the article indicated, as a result of losing this large amount of money, this will make it difficult to have the mental health resources they were hoping to have, especially in areas of high need. So the question is, what do we do next? We don't have an option at this point to not have mental health resources available. So, you know, we need to look to state funding. We need to look to private organizations and maybe some public organizations to help out, like NAMI or JED, so that we get creative and make sure that kids who are in need can get access to mental health services that are covered by the school, or creative in some way where we make mental health more acceptable and more accessible.
Dr. Robbie, a new study found that teens dealing with anxiety or PTSD, they use social media very differently. How should parents or educators interpret this, and what signs should they be watching for?
This was a really interesting survey in the sense that it helped us break down how social media impacts young teens. So what we found was internalizing issues like mood disorders or PTSD, anxiety. They were more impacted by social comparison, by the likes and feedback that they would get, and also had less control over the screen time and were less aware of the emotional reaction they were having to their social media use. So this is great for parents and teachers to know your child, know what could be impacting them, and help them come up with a plan that makes it a healthier option rather than something that really is poor for their mental well-being.
Every little bit of information helps there. All right, here's an interesting one. A Swiss rehab clinic has come up with a new term for addiction to luxury spending among the super wealthy. It's called opulomania. Not a problem in my household. Not all of us have a Lamborghini addiction or can have one. But what's going on here? And is there anything the rest of us can take away from this, regardless of how big our bank accounts are?
Right. It's hard to feel sorry for people who have an addiction to Lamborghinis, but a shopping addiction really is done to not have a certain feeling. So it's either amongst this group, they feel lonely, low self-esteem, and in some cases, they get status from these luxury items that they buy. And so it's very hard to address because culturally we sanction having these luxury items as being linked with success. So now they are trying to work with these kids and help them understand what is the connection between cause and effect. What type of emotion are you chasing? And once you buy an item, how long does that really impact you in terms of how you want to experience yourself? Sometimes it's due to impulse disorders. Sometimes it's due to mood disorders like bipolar disorder. So it's just interesting to look at addictions come in all shapes and sizes, literally.
And oftentimes what we're really looking for doesn't maybe cost us anything at all. So.
That's right.
All right.
Thank you, Dr.
Very
Robbie.
true.
Thanks, Dr. Robbie.
All right, this morning we're hearing from Barstool Sports founder Dave Portnoy after a video was posted to social media that seems to show a sign bearing an anti-Semitic message being displayed at his bar in Philadelphia. NBC News correspondent Sam Brock has the story.
In videos that have already garnered tens of millions of views.
There was a sign yesterday that said, "F the Jews." I've been shaking. I've been so mad.
Barstool Sports founder Dave Portnoy voicing outrage over an anti-Semitic sign he says was ordered in his Philadelphia bar and then posted onto social media.
Maybe it wouldn't have shocked me as much if I didn't see it in a bar that I owned. But yeah, the uptick in anti-Semitism has been noticeable.
Did they apologize to you?
Oh, yeah. I mean, they were doing what I would say anybody would do. We're not anti-Semitic. It was a joke. But at this point, you're caught red-handed.
Some who were there shocked by what they saw.
I was out and I seen it and it said that sign and I was just like, whoa, it threw everybody off guard.
Portnoy, who's Jewish, says both waitresses who served the group were fired. With Temple University immediately taking action, the president saying in a statement, in the strongest terms possible, let me be clear, anti-Semitism is abhorrent. It has no place at Temple. The university has placed one student on interim suspension with a police investigation ongoing, as some Jewish students on campus express their concern.
It kind of feels, like I have to watch my back all the time just for wearing my star out. It's not a good feeling.
Meanwhile, Portnoy pushing for accountability.
Let's try to turn a hideous incident into maybe a learning experience.
And says those responsible had initially agreed to his offer to send them to Auschwitz in Poland, where roughly 1 million Jews were killed during the Holocaust. Portnoy says one of them walked it back.
And he's like, well, I had nothing to do with it. I felt pressured into admitting that I had anything to do with it.
Adding the trip for that individual now off the table.
All right, our thanks to Sam Brock for that report. Portnoy says he's confident the two people involved are Temple students. The university is still looking into it and says expulsion is a possibility.
Coming up, defending PBS.
We're joined by the creator of the Arthur books, which became, of course, a classic kids' TV show. He's making his case against the Trump administration's plans to end federal funding for public broadcasters when we return.
Listen to full episodes of Meet the Press wherever you get your podcasts.
News lives in the now.
Look at this. You can't even see anything anymore.
Let's break down what we know.
You gotta see this.
News for the generation of now is NBC News Now.
Breaking news tonight. This is a massive storm affecting almost all of Florida. This soldier is scanning the sky for Russian drones.
Every angle, every night. NBC Nightly News. Kristen Welker hosts Meet the Press every Sunday on NBC.
Welcome back. Let's get to some money news, starting with a major decision from Ford amid all this tariff uncertainty.
CNBC's Savannah Hanau joins us with that and more. Other Wall Street headlines. Good morning, Savannah.
Hey, Christine. Hey, Joe. Good morning to you. Yes, so as you mentioned, Ford is pulling its financial forecast for the year because of uncertainty over President Trump's tariffs, saying they could cost the company about $1.5 billion. Ford CFO says the automaker is focused on managing what they can control. Now, Ford says it suspended the guidance until there's more clarity about the effect of retaliatory tariffs and how consumers may react to price increases. Rite Aid files for bankruptcy for the second time in 2 years as it looks for buyers for its assets. During its last restructuring, the drugstore chain shut down hundreds of stores, settled lawsuits over its role in the opioid crisis, and handed control of the business to its creditors. Rite Aid has lined up financing to fund the bankruptcy process, and it's working on the smooth transition of customers' prescriptions to other pharmacies. And DoorDash striking a deal to buy its British rival Deliveroo for nearly $4 billion. The takeover will help DoorDash expand in Europe, competing against Just Eat and Uber Eats, adding Deliveroo's largest markets, Britain and Ireland. The two companies had orders worth a combined $90 billion last year, with roughly 50 million monthly users. The deal shouldn't face regulatory issues, as DoorDash has virtually no presence where Deliveroo operates, guys. I love that name, Deliveroo.
Yeah. Me too.
Great name.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, Savannah. More fallout this morning after President Donald Trump signed an executive order last week to end public funding of National Public Radio and PBS.
President Trump says the order stops the government from paying for what he calls biased and partisan news coverage, something that many would disagree with. The implications go far beyond that, impacting educational, non-commercial children's shows across the country.
For some perspective, we are joined by Mark Brown. He is the author and co-creator of Arthur, a popular cartoon on PBS. Good morning, and thank you so much for joining us. Great to have you here. And you published this op-ed over the weekend outlining your defense of PBS, specifically, Mark, the kids program. Walk us through your main points.
Well, you know, first of all, I was listening to the Arthur theme song this morning, and I think I have to change a couple lines in it, like, hey, it's not a wonderful kind of day. And I feel like kids are my boss. I work for them, and that's why I wrote the op-ed. I want to have a voice that is going to be helpful to kids, because I really want to make all of the good things that are available on PBS to remain there for kids. You know, if we don't speak out, nothing changes. I think the op-ed, one of the things that is probably most compelling to people is the fact that kids and now young adults write me almost every day. And two of the letters that stood out and I included in the op-ed are a little boy who is now a young man wrote and said how much Arthur had meant to him as a child. He was in his school bus on the way to school in New York City on 9/11. And he was watching the Twin Towers come down, and he happened to have with him his Arthur plush animal, which he was hugging, and he wanted to tell me how much Arthur and the programs that PBS delivered to him as a child meant to him, and the comfort that they gave him. Another letter just arrived a couple of days ago. A young man who loved Arthur, watched it every day with his family. He wanted to make a difference in the world because of what he saw on Arthur. And so he worked really hard. He became a volunteer fireman. And saved up enough money to go to medical school, and now he's a pediatric oncologist helping kids with cancer. So, I mean, those are just a couple of examples of the way that Arthur and other programming on PBS impacts children's lives.
Mark, I know another key issue, and this is something Christine and I were talking about. We both grew up in the Midwest where you'd watch Saturday morning cartoons and PBS, like cable literally maybe didn't even get to your community. Do you worry this will disproportionately impact rural communities?
Oh, that's one of the most heartbreaking parts of this funding cut. I think that probably 40 PBS affiliates in states like Alaska, North Dakota, Idaho are going to lose their funding. And once they are gone, we can't get them back. And what people may not understand is that these affiliates tailor their programming for their constituents. PBS doesn't tell them what to air. So what they're getting is helpful information for their area of the country. And I think that would really be tragic.
Mark, what about the allegations, though, that the PBS promotes a liberal agenda? I mean, we've been hearing that pretty much steadily since the 1990s, and that's what the Trump administration's concern is. How do you address that accusation?
I think what our programming for children does is reflect the true America. Everything that we put on Arthur comes from real life. I mean, the Arthur books began as me remembering what it was like to be in third grade. Unfortunately, I have a very good memory. So all my friends became characters on Arthur. And the stories, the books that we began with were all things that happened to my kids. And I think that's one reason that they ring true to children. The characters were real, the situations were real. And we try to offer things that no other kids programs would to kids, like what it's like to have autism, asthma. With animation, we could go into Buster's lungs and show kids what it was like to have asthma.
Yeah.
We dealt with difficult subject matter, like when a family is dealing with dementia or cancer. We tackled a lot of tough issues in 25 years.
Mark, thank you for your time this morning. We really, truly appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
The NFL is now set to bring its biggest off-season event to the heart of the nation's capital. President Trump was joined by NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell at the White House yesterday to announce the 2027 NFL Draft will be held on the National Mall. It marks a surprising turn from the NFL and its reported stance to shy away from politics. NBC News correspondent Ryan Noble says more.
President Trump appearing in full command of the NFL by laying out a huge deal with the Commanders.
That the 2027 NFL Draft, that's a big thing, will be held right here in our nation's capital, Washington.
Bringing one of the sport's most popular events, the NFL Draft, to the National Mall. An event attended by hundreds of thousands and watched by millions more. But for the president, this image may be the bigger win. Roger Goodell, the man who announces the picks.
We're the first pick.
Picking the White House to make this announcement.
When we come here to D.C. in
The NFL commissioner, whose father served in the House and Senate, is like the Travis Hunter of political navigators, skillful on both sides of the ball. Just this year, meeting with President Trump at the Super Bowl, the first time ever a sitting president has gone to the big game. While days before, defying the president's executive order to upend corporate efforts on diversity, equity, and inclusion, or DEI.
It does make the NFL better. So we're not in this because it's a trend to get in it or a trend to get out of it.
But for the president, he's taken much more of a my way or the highway approach to America's most popular league. When he failed to buy the Baltimore Colts in the 80s, he went to the rival USFL. Before a lawsuit he launched against the NFL effectively tanked the rival upstart. And after failing to buy the Buffalo Bills in 2014, he pivoted to another passion, politics. But the league followed him there, his first term marked by the national anthem protests, led by a kneeling Colin Kaepernick, then the San Francisco 49ers quarterback, who has since settled a grievance with the league over alleged collusion to keep him out, something President Trump desperately wanted.
Wouldn't you love to see one of these NFL owners when somebody disrespects our flag, to say, get that son of a off the field right now.
The question right now is why now? The NFL near a popularity peak, with its games making up 72 of the most 100 watched events in the U.S. last year. So they're not hurting for fans, but they are trying to appeal to a new base, thanks to a new fan. Taylor Swift dating the Kansas City Chiefs tight end Travis Kelce. One poll showing nearly 2/3 of Gen Z and millennial women now hold positive views of the NFL, to the point that the NFL inked a deal with a popular brand among young women to create content. You see Swift there as the face of it. That running headfirst into our new NBC News Stay Tuned poll, showing less than a quarter of women approve of the president. All of it a gamble by Goodell and the NFL that its new base is here to stay, as it makes an old foe a powerful fan.
All right. Thanks for that, Ryan. All right, coming up, the Pope's pasta.
Yeah, next we're going to bring you the story behind a factory in Italy that received a special gift from Pope Francis just before he passed away, when we come back. Rihanna and A$AP Rocky showed up to last night's Met Gala with a dose of dandy and a baby on board. That's right, the hitmakers are expecting child number 3. The Fenty Beauty founder revealed the news right before stepping out onto last night's carpet. Her custom Marc Jacobs look, also showing off the baby bump there. A$AP Rocky was a co-chair of this year's gala, which had the theme Superfine, tailoring black style. We'll be talking a whole lot more about the event and bringing you some of the best looks from the night coming up in our next hour. But I just watched all night long last night.
I loved all of it. I really did. I really did. All right, finally this hour, as we stay on top of the latest moves to elect a new pope over at Vatican City, we remember Pope Francis, known for his generosity. It's only right that Pope Francis' final act of kindness is offering a taste of hope for others in need. NBC News correspondent Ann Thompson has that story.
In Italy, pasta is sacred, made with just 2 ingredients, semolina and water. But Pastificio Futuro has a little something extra. The factory sits outside the Casal del Marmo Juvenile Detention Center in Rome. Here, Pope Francis washed the feet of the young inmates on Holy Thursday. Then, before he died, he gave the factory all the money in his bank account, some 200,000 euros. Its employees are current or former inmates, giving Carmine Gallo a way to return to society.
Pope Francis donated the money to pay for the mortgage here. What difference will that make in your future?
He says he now has a future because of Francis. Food technologist Gianfranco Desideri leads the factory.
I started here for make a good pasta, and then I understand the real purpose of this project. So I help these guys to change their life.
You're trying to make good men.
Yes, I'm trying.
As word of Francis' donation spread, sales of the 10 different pastas got a papal spike. Each bag with the Pope's advice: don't let your hope be stolen. That special ingredient, a final gift from a man who practiced what he preached. Ann Thompson, NBC News, Rome.
Love that story.
Yeah.
And now I want pasta. All right, that's going to do it for this hour. Morning news now.
The news continues right now. And good Tuesday morning. I'm Christine Romans. I'm in for Savannah today.
And I'm Joe Fryer. Right now on Morning News Now, the work starts now. A critical one-on-one as President Trump hosts Canada's newly minted Prime Minister, Mark Carney. The pair are expected to go toe-to-toe on tariffs and that bold rhetoric from Mr. Trump on the northern nation becoming America's 51st state. More on that and the controversial new immigration policy that has the administration paying up if people self-deport. Communication breakdown. New details surrounding that travel turbulence sending shockwaves to airports nationwide, with Jersey's Newark airport the epicenter. But we're learning about a critical equipment malfunction that left air traffic control in the dark at a busy travel hub. Plus, get real, America's mad dash for a real ID. Now down to the final hours ahead of tomorrow's deadline. But will lengthy lines at DMVs? Some folks are waiting hours to get their hands on a new card. So what might happen if you don't make the upgrade in time? Stick with us. We've got the answers. And later in the hour, countdown to Conclave. We're on the ground at the Vatican with the final preps underway. World's Catholics now anxiously awaiting the election of a new leader, the successor to the People's Pontiff, Pope Francis. A lot to cover this morning. We're actually going to begin with that rush to get a real ID that is sweeping the nation ahead of tomorrow's long-awaited deadline to upgrade your driver's license before you fly.
Yeah, the deadline is here, and in this final home stretch, jaw-dropping lines are stretching around DMVs across the country. Many Americans waiting hours to get their IDs updated. NBC News correspondent Maggie Vespa joins us from Chicago's O'Hare Airport with more. Hey, Maggie, good morning. You got all your documents?
Hey, guys, good morning. Thankfully, I do. I'm so relieved that I got this done like years in advance. But for everyone else, the deadline is here. The warnings are front and center. These signs actually are posted around O'Hare. They say, do you have a real ID? Airports and TSA across the country just pulling out all the stops to let people know, make sure they know that decades of real ID buildup are coming to a head and enforcement begins tomorrow. This morning at DMVs across the country, the real ID rush is on, with lines stretching on for blocks.
It's very intimidating, let me tell you.
The line is intimidating.
Very intimidating, yes.
Ahead of tomorrow's long-awaited May 7th deadline, we found people waiting outside this Chicago location for up to 4 hours. When you walked up here and you saw this line, what did you think?
Oh, took my breath away, not in a good way.
You tried to buy a spot in line.
Yeah, I have 40 bucks in my wallet. I was like, hey, anyone wanna give me their spot in line?
Beginning tomorrow, TSA will start requiring those boarding domestic flights to show real ID compliant driver's licenses. Passengers can bring some other forms of ID, including a valid passport. TSA says those who don't have acceptable forms of ID should allow extra time for screening.
We don't want anybody to get delayed and not be able to travel when they get to an airport.
The shift rooted in calls for more safety in air travel, with Congress passing the Real ID Act in 2005 after the 9/11 Commission recommended stronger federal standards for state-issued IDs. Following decades of delays, the wait is finally over, and lots of Americans are scrambling.
I've been trying on and off for a week, and I either miss it or they flat out tell me it's booked.
The summer travel season already off to a chaotic start, with air traffic controller shortages nationwide under a renewed microscope. United Airlines warning passengers to avoid hard-hit Newark Airport, canceling close to 36 daily flights through the crowded hub. Now, America's airports are counting down to another major shift, with the Real ID ripple effect already unmissable. Okay, so amid all of that, we're also seeing a lot of state and local officials, guys, sort of doing a lot to address, they say, false online rumors about Real ID, specifically that you're somehow generally legally required to get it by tomorrow, or that you won't be able to get it after tomorrow. And they stress neither of those things are true. You can absolutely get a Real ID after tomorrow, anytime after tomorrow. And for most Americans, you really only need it if you're planning to fly within the U.S. and use your driver's license as your ID. Guys.
All right, Maggie, thank you so much. Let's talk now to Steve Loren, a deputy with the Transportation Security Administration. Good morning. Thank you so much for joining us on this very busy day. Let's begin where we just left off with Maggie and Real ID set to go into effect tomorrow. What can people expect if they're planning to fly, and how much different will it be navigating through security?
Well, first of all, good morning, and thank you so much for having me on. For tomorrow, I will tell you that TSA is ready. All airports, all states have operational plans in place, and we continue to work not only with our state partners, but with our federal partners and also the aviation partners to make sure that we are moving forward. We don't anticipate any delays. Our teams are ready to execute for the full implementation of Real ID tomorrow. So we are ready.
So you guys might be ready. We don't know if all the travelers are going to be ready. We've seen those long lines at DMVs, people trying to get the real ID ahead of the deadline. Some just won't make the cut. So what happens to those who don't have the real ID and then they also don't have that acceptable alternative like a passport? What's their experience going to be like at the airport?
Absolutely. So one of the things that I will tell you that 81% of the customers that are transiting through airports today have a real ID compliant driver's license or an acceptable ID like a passport. So that's a good news story for everyone. As far as arriving at the airport, I would give, my advice would be to give people plenty of time. There's going to be a full court press for TSA and also the airlines and the airports to have people outside of the checkpoints to provide direction. And those customers may receive some additional screening based on not having a real ID compliant driver's license.
Yeah, hopefully the minute you walk into that airport, there's someone saying, hey, hey, make sure you have the right ID here, otherwise you're going to get caught in a line. Steve, let's talk about the ongoing situation at Newark Airport and these delays and cancellations over the past week. Now, we know it's partly due to an air traffic controller shortage. We've got outdated technology. How safe is it to fly in and out of Newark Airport right now?
First of all, it's very safe. I will tell you from the TSA side of the house, we're fully staffed. We're fully ready for Real ID implementation, and we continue to work with our state and federal partners and support in any way that we can. So I would encourage people to fly. I would encourage people to make sure that you give yourself sufficient time, and we were going to make sure that you have, first of all, a safe experience, but also a pleasant experience going through any federal checkpoint.
From the TSA perspective, we are just a few weeks away from Memorial Day. That's the unofficial start to summer. How much concern do you have about the situation at Newark? We're seeing in some other hubs, as well as this backlog of trying to get people real ID. Is that going to create chaos potentially for people who are trying to get to their planes during the summer?
So the answer to that is I don't have any concern. I will tell you from a TSA side of the house, we have strong operational plans, not only for Real ID full implementation, but also for the busy summer travel. So I don't anticipate any extended wait times or processing times. We are fully staffed. We are ready to handle the summer volumes, and we look forward to welcoming our passengers at all 430-plus airports across the system.
All right, Steve Loren of the TSA, thank you so much. Nice to see you this morning, sir.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure.
In Washington, President Trump is set to meet with Canada's Prime Minister Mark Carney later today. It is the first in-person meeting between the two leaders. It comes amid fraught tensions between the countries, spurred on by the president's trade tariffs and those repeated threats to make Canada the 51st state. NBC News senior White House correspondent Garrett Hake joins us now with more. Garrett, good morning.
Hey, Joe, good morning. And look, Carney won his election in part because of a backlash in Canada against President Trump's tariffs and Trump's taunts about making our northern neighbor into the 51st state. Now the two are set to sit down together to discuss a way to thaw this icy relationship. And for President Trump, that may be the easy part as the trade war with China continues with no deal in sight.
This morning, President Trump preparing for a high-stakes sit-down with Canada's new prime minister, as Trump's tariff-fueled trade war has driven a wedge between the closest of allies.
I'm not sure what he wants to see me about, but I guess he wants to make a deal.
Mark Carney was elected in April amid Trump tariffs on Canadian products like steel, aluminum, and auto parts. Carney posting Monday after landing in D.C. for his first ever meeting with Trump, quote, "Canada and the United States are strongest when we work together, and that work starts now." The Trump administration now projecting optimism that trade talks could produce their first new deal with a foreign partner as soon as this week.
I think we could see substantial progress in the coming weeks.
But there's been little sign of progress with China, whose products currently face a 145% tariff. And China saying overnight that for negotiations to begin, the U.S., quote, should stop threatening and pressuring. The president pressed about the potential for rising toy prices by Kristen Welker.
You said some dolls are going to cost more. Isn't that an acknowledgement that some prices will go up?
I don't think a beautiful baby girl that's 11 years old needs to have 30 dolls. I think they can have 3 dolls or 4 dolls. because what we were doing with China was just unbelievable.
On Monday, toy giant Mattel, maker of Barbies and Hot Wheels, saying it will move some production from China to India to avoid those high tariffs. But it still expects to incur $270 million in tariff-related costs, some of which will be passed on to consumers. As Democrats blast the trade war for raising prices, President Trump holding firm that other countries like China and Canada today will come to him.
We have something that they all want.
On the immigration front, the Department of Homeland Security has a new concept they're rolling out of self-deportation. DHS says it costs them about $17,000 to deport an undocumented immigrant. Now they're offering a $1,000 stipend and travel assistance instead for migrants who choose to self-deport, saying this will be cheaper. These people return to their home country on their own accord. It would also allow those migrants to apply to come back into the country legally instead of facing the years-long ban that comes with being removed. This is all part of the administration's effort to ramp up deportations, one of the president's core campaign promises. Joe?
All right, Garrett, thank you so much. The messaging app TeleMessage has suspended its services after hackers claim to have breached it and stolen files.
Yeah, the app was seen in use last week by President Trump's former national security advisor, Mike Waltz, more than a month after he accidentally added a journalist to a Signal group chat discussing military strikes in Yemen.
So NBC News reporter Kevin Collier has been following this. He joins us now with more. Kevin, good to have you with us. First of all, just tell us a little bit about the TeleMessage app. How does it work, say, compared with an app like Signal, and how secure is it supposed to be?
So Signal is basically the best-in-class publicly available secure chat app. It goes over our shared Wi-Fi and through our shared towers, but it's encrypted while it does that. TeleMessage is basically an unlicensed and cloned version of Signal that automatically makes an unencrypted backup of every message. It's a way of abiding by laws that require government officials to retain records of conversations, but it also means kind of trusting this tiny company with all of these conversations.
So what are we learning about this particular security breach? How did it happen, and just how serious is it?
So there are two separate incidents, two separate hackers who got into it over the weekend. One I spoke with and one who spoke with the tech publication 404 Media. Both hackers described the technique they used to get in as just trivial for a moderately skilled hackers. In short, we don't know the full extent of what they were able to steal, just that they were able to get in pretty easily. So the two big questions that are looming here are that, A, did any of these hackers take backup messages that were related to national security conversations like Mike Waltz would have? And B, did any foreign intelligence services also hack this company?
Kevin, how widespread is this app's use in government, and do we know how departments are reacting to this breach?
Well, the one big one we know is Customs and Border Protection, which uses it pretty extensively. They announced last night they're suspending their use of TeleMessage while this gets sorted, and it's not clear yet how they're going to keep records of conversation while they're in this interim period.
All right, thanks so much for that. All right, tensions are escalating once again in the Middle East after Israel carried out a new wave of airstrikes on Houthi rebels in Yemen overnight. Meanwhile, in Gaza, Israel announced plans for an intensive escalation in the Palestinian enclave, with Israel's security cabinet approving plans for its military to seize all of the Gaza Strip. NBC News International correspondent Raf Sanchez joins us now from London with the latest. Raf, good morning. Tell us the latest.
Christine, good morning. Yeah, just 1 week before President Trump is due to make his first trip to the Middle East of this term, Israel says it is launching a renewed offensive in the Gaza Strip.
This morning, Gaza's exhausted population bracing for a new assault, as Israel calls up thousands of additional troops for what Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says will be a powerful renewed operation against Hamas. While last night, IDF jets pounding targets in Yemen after a missile fired by Iranian-backed Houthi militants pierced Israel's air defenses and fell close to its main airport. Ever since the October 7th terror attacks, Netanyahu has vowed to defeat Hamas and free the hostages. But a year and a half into the war, Hamas is weakened but not destroyed, and still holds 59 hostages, less than half of whom are thought to be alive. Israel says this operation will be different. It will hold territory long-term and push the majority of Gazans into so-called Hamas-free zones. While overnight in the U.S., protesters occupied a building at the University of Washington in Seattle. The Trump administration had been pushing for a deal, but talks stalled. And in Gaza, hunger and desperation rising as Israel has blocked all humanitarian aid for more than 2 months. Rights groups say that's against international law. But Israel says Hamas steals incoming aid.
We're going to help the people of Gaza because they're being treated very badly by Hamas.
Among them, 14-year-old Anas, whose days are spent searching for food and water. Today, he's lucky. Tomorrow, the search for survival begins again.
And President Trump will be making stops next week in Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and the United Arab Emirates. His special envoy, Steve Witkoff, says he hopes this presidential trip could jumpstart those stalled ceasefire negotiations. Christine.
All right, Raf, thank you.
Spring storms are still on the move in several spots across the country.
Meteorologist Michelle Grossman has your rainy roundup. Michelle, good morning.
Good morning, guys. Great to see you. Yeah, we are watching these storms in slow motion in the Northeast and the Southwest. The Southern Plains, we're looking at very stormy weather this morning, and we'll continue to see that as we go throughout the day. But starting in the Northeast, we have a flood watch through parts of New York, Connecticut, Massachusetts. Because of that area of low pressure that's cut off, it's spinning in that moisture. So we're seeing rounds of rain causing the chance for some flooding. We need this rain because we're still in a drought, but we are seeing that rain going over saturated soils, is going over the same areas, and it has been for days, finally moving out later on tomorrow. Then as we look towards the Southwest, we're looking at that severe weather threat once again. Heavy rain, flash flooding is likely. We could see up to 8 inches of rain in some spots. And again, we're going to see training storms where we're going to see those storms going over the same areas. It's all due to what's called an omega block. It's sort of a jet stream that's shaped like the Greek letter omega, and it's stuck in place. So you can see these areas of low pressure that get cut off. They have nowhere to go, and that's why we're seeing rain in the same spots. And we're going to continue to see that before it finally lifts out tomorrow. And this is what we can see on our map today. We have that heavy rain in the Northeast, parts of New England. We have the strong storms in the Southern Plains. We're going to see large hail, the chance for strong tornadoes, very heavy downpours leading to heavy rain. And we're even seeing some snow on the backside of this. So portions of the Rockies looking at some snow on this Tuesday, and some rain mixing in there as well. Let's start with the severe weather threat in the Southern Plains because we've been tracking this for hours, really since yesterday. And we're seeing this so early in the morning. Typically, we get a little break in the morning and it starts to ignite in the afternoon. But we're seeing those storms this morning. We're looking at the lightning, hearing the thunder. Very heavy rainfall in spots. And we have tornado watches. We have tornado warnings. We've been tracking that. And that will be the theme as we go throughout the rest of today, because 20 million people are at risk for severe weather, especially this afternoon, this evening, with the chance of strong tornadoes, especially where you see that orange shading. So Lufkin, north of Houston, but also in the yellow shading, stretching all the way back to portions of northern Texas into Louisiana. That does include Lake Charles. This is something we're going to watch very closely. Bill Cairns will be on for the rest of the day, starting this afternoon. Tracking these storms for you. And talking about heavy rain because we're pulling that moisture off the Gulf, and we're going to see it in the same spot. So 21 million people under flood alerts from New Mexico to Oklahoma City, including Texas, Arkansas, Mississippi, and Louisiana. And we could see up to 8 inches in some spots. Where you see the darker colors, that's where we're looking at the heaviest amounts of rain expected right off the Gulf there. So places like Jackson, Alexandria, New Orleans, we'll see some very heavy rain today. Certainly be careful as you're out and about on the roadways. Flood alerts once again in the Northeast over those saturated soils. And we're not expecting a whole lot more rain, but we could see some heavy downpours within any of these training storms. So the highest amounts would be in portions of New England into the interior parts of the Northeast. And we could see some strong storms, too, in parts of New York, the interior parts of New York, the interior parts of Pennsylvania later on today. Everything's on the table in terms of risks, in terms of hail, some heavy downpours, and also the chance of damaging winds. This is what it looks like. That area of low pressure circulating in that moisture. There is a chance for those strong storms later on this afternoon into the evening hours. So in the Northeast, you want to be weather aware today. Tomorrow, that system finally gradually lifts off the New England coast. We're going to see a few lingering showers into parts of New England, but they're going to weaken as we head throughout the rest of Wednesday. Today, though, they're fully in place. That block continues in terms of the temperatures as well. We're looking at cool temperatures in the Southwest and warm throughout the Midwest. So, Christine, I want you, when you talk to your son tonight, whether he's still back at college. Joe, I don't know if you know this. He's a meteorology student. Yes. But drop that omega block knowledge, just casually, in your conversation with him.
I'll be so cool. I had a there was a WWE wrestler yesterday, omega block today. I'm winning all
You and your kids are just bonding right now, thanks to all this.
Thanks so much, Michelle.
I love it.
Nice to see you.
Sure.
All right, we've been reporting this morning on the chaos at airports, especially with that Real ID deadline now just hours away. Well, now we want to take a closer look at what's happening at New Jersey's Newark Airport, the site of some scary moments. Passengers there are experiencing major delays after an equipment malfunction last week led to a total loss of communication for a short time. And that's not the only travel hurdle there. NBC News correspondent Sam Brock is live at Newark with the latest. Sam, good morning.
Joe, good morning. I can confirm the chaos here is also real. Right now, this is sort of the epicenter of the national misery map, if you will. If you look over my shoulder, you'll just see a bunch of orange delays popping up on the flight information board. It's indicative of what's going on right now, Joe. Already this morning, the FAA coming out and announcing it had its ground delay program in effect today, which means the arriving flights are on average about 2 hours and 40 minutes behind, while at the same time, as you mentioned, we are getting more information about a mishap that happened here a week ago that led to a total loss of communication.
This morning, new air travel warning says issues at one of the nation's busiest airports continues to wreak havoc nationwide after a serious and potentially dangerous equipment malfunction at Newark Liberty International Airport in New Jersey just over a week ago. The delays still having a ripple effect in Los Angeles, Atlanta, Chicago, Miami, and Dallas, and other cities, according to FlightAware.
Approach lost all their radars. 3 of the 4 radar screens went black, and they have no frequencies.
The Air Traffic Controllers Association saying last week controllers at Newark, quote, temporarily lost radar and communications with the aircraft under their control, unable to see, hear, or talk to them.
It may lose you on for certain times of when you're flying.
Multiple outlets reporting that radar and communication outage left controllers blind for 90 seconds.
90 seconds is a lifetime for an air traffic controller. Even though it was a scary situation, pilots are trained to handle air traffic control outages if they lose communications.
Some staff then taking leaves of absence.
We have to sleep here and eat here. We don't have any more money.
Newark is a major hub for United, which is reducing flights there and now offering to waive change fees and fare differences for some of their passengers. The FAA saying in a statement that it's slowing the rate of arrivals into the airport and warning that updates are desperately needed.
It's a sign that we have a frail system in place and it has to be fixed.
This as fears for how the chaos may impact summer travel grow. New Jersey's governor asking the Department of Transportation for help. But any meaningful change might be a ways off.
This is not going to be a quick fix. It's going to take years to not only get better equipment, but also to train the controllers.
So, Joe and Christine, we obviously heard there from the Transportation Secretary, Mr. Duffy. He also said in that interview that later this week, the expectation is they're going to be unveiling a brand new package of revamping the entire air traffic control system, which sounds great. More controllers, new radar, new telecommunication, new infrastructure. But that will likely take years to be able to build all of that up. And even trying to incentivize more controllers, sweeten the package, if you will, it still takes years to onboard them and to familiarize them with specific regions of the country, which means even if you wanted to pull people from one area to another, it's just not that simple. The bottom line for many travelers, this is going to go on for a while.
Yeah,
back
this
to you guys.
is an issue we've been talking about for years, so we know there's no quick fix. Sam, thank you so much.
Much more to come on this hour of Morning News Now, including a possible link between the shingles vaccine and a lower risk of dementia in older Americans.
First, after the break, we're going to take you live to the Vatican in the final hours before cardinals cast their first votes for a new leader of the Catholic Church. Those stories and more next. Welcome back. Final preparations are underway at the Vatican this morning as the College of Cardinals prepares for tomorrow's papal conclave. 133 cardinals from all across the globe are now gathered and have been meeting privately ahead of this highly secretive meeting to select the next pope. NBC News correspondent Ann Thompson is at the Vatican with more. Ann, good morning.
Good morning, Joe. The cardinal electors are all here, and the workers who will feed and care for those cardinal electors when they're in the conclave, well, they have been sworn to an oath of secrecy that lasts for life. It is a crucial element, the Vatican believes, in the selection of the next man to lead the Catholic Church. This morning, the 12th and final meeting of all the Church's cardinals. Each man getting a chance to talk if they want to, while the rest listen in hopes of identifying the next pope. Church officials and workers in the conclave pledging not to reveal what they see or hear. Michael Cherney, made a cardinal by Pope Francis, is one of the voters.
How do you prepare yourself for this?
Well, the process is our preparation. In other words, we listen to one another about what the needs of the church and of the world are, and we reflect on who, what profile, and then who among us could meet those needs.
A little more than 24 hours until the first vote, there is still no clear consensus. Hungarian Cardinal Peter Erda, a favorite of some conservatives. Italian diplomats Pietro Parolin and Pier Battista Pizzaballa are mentioned as contenders, as is Filipino Louis Tagle, nicknamed the Asian Francis. New York Cardinal Timothy Dolan is not tipping his hand.
Well, I hope there's a pope that is like Jesus, because the Pope is supposed to be the vicar of Christ on earth.
Pope Francis captured the world's attention with his common touch. Fordham University's David Gibson says he won't be easy to follow.
If you're not going to get another Francis, you still want someone, maybe in a quieter way, knows how to reach out to people, knows how to touch people's hearts, not just talk to their heads.
Now, today, the cardinal electors can start moving into those 2 hotels here at the Vatican where they will be shut off from the world. They can bring no secretaries, no interpreters, just their clothes and their prayers. And most of all, they can't bring their electronics, no computers, no cell phones, no tablets. And that's got one British cardinal wondering how in the world he's going to get up in the morning because he uses his alarm on his phone. Joe?
All right, Ann, thank you so much.
All right, in the United Kingdom, the royal family front and center yesterday as they led ceremonies to mark 80 years since the end of World War II. But once again, one face was missing, Prince Harry. He's been making headlines thanks to a new interview that once again put the family's rift in the spotlight. NBC News correspondent Danielle Hamamdjian reports from London. Good morning.
London's Big Ben marking the beginning of celebrations. 80 years ago, Nazi Germany surrendered. Europe was in ruins, but emerged victorious. A military parade in honor of VE Day and all the men and women who served. Watching along with veterans, many of whom are now in their late 90s, the King and senior members of the royal family. Notably absent, Prince Harry, who stepped down from his royal duties in 2020. In a rare interview last week with the BBC, Prince Harry once again bringing the family's private feud into the public after a court denied his request for public security.
Life is precious. I don't know how much longer my father has. He won't speak to me because of this security stuff.
After the ruling, Meghan Markle posting this black and white image of Prince Harry with the couple's 2 children in their California backyard.
I can't see a world in which I would be bringing my wife and children back to the UK at this point.
But in London, the next generation once again stealing the show. Prince Louis seen here flicking his hair, teasing his big brother George, who had done the same.
Long live the cause of freedom.
These are the first commemorations to take place without any of the royals who were present 8 decades ago, including then Princess Elizabeth. And this is what it looked like then. The Germans had dropped 20,000 bombs on London, even hitting Buckingham Palace.
Every section of London has been hit. 2,000 civilians were killed, 8,000 injured in 2 weeks.
Once it was all over, massive, jubilant crowds gathered around the palace for a glimpse of then King George.
God save the king.
As they did for his grandson, King Charles. In the crowds, the curious, the patriots, and the odd American cousin. Catherine Pietrangelo flew from Texas to be here.
We just think the world of anybody who does their time in the service, no matter where they're from, but especially the Brits because of the close alliance between the 2 countries. And I hope it stays that way.
Danielle Hamamdjian, NBC News, London.
All right, coming up, we've got some scary scenes outside of Jennifer Aniston's L.A. home.
That's right. When we come back, more on the man who police say rammed his car into the front gate of her Bel Air mansion. Yesterday, that happened while she was inside. That's next. Stay with us. We are back with a case that is sparking outrage and raising new questions. A Georgia man remains behind bars more than 6 weeks after he was accused of trying to kidnap a toddler at a Walmart. But newly released surveillance video is now casting doubt on that claim and igniting a national conversation about what really happened. NBC News correspondent Priya Sridhar has the story.
I was in the Walmart and I had to rip my baby out of some other man's hands because he was trying to snatch him.
This dramatic 911 call detailing what sounds like every parent's worst nightmare.
It all happened so fast and he was out of the store.
It allegedly happened here at this Walmart outside Atlanta. This security footage shows a woman identified in a police report as 26-year-old Caroline Miller on a mobility scooter with her 2 kids when a man approached. But what happens next is at the center of a kidnapping case that has drawn international attention. Miller told police that an Indian man approached her and grabbed her 2-year-old son and pulled him away. Miller did not return NBC's request for comment, but detailed the alleged struggle to local station Atlanta News First.
And I'm like, no, 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 what are you doing? What are you doing? And I got him back, and then he just stared at me and then goes, oh, I just wanted to get him out of your lap so you could get up and help me, which was weird. That didn't make any sense. And then he just walked off.
That man was eventually identified as 56-year-old Mahendra Mik Patel, a real estate investor, retired engineer, husband, and father of 2. Police arrested him and charged him with kidnapping of a minor, assault, and battery. He's been in jail now for nearly 6 weeks. But now Miller's account is very much in dispute.
When I finally got the video, I was upset that Mr. Patel was still in jail.
Patel's attorney, Ashley Merchant, says the evidence in this case shows something very different.
Walk me through what that video showed when you finally were able to see it.
I see the video and I'm like, how has this happened? You know, how was he even arrested?
Merchant provided NBC News with over 9 hours of surveillance video from various cameras inside that Walmart. In the video, you can see Patel approach Miller. According to the police report, Miller says Patel asked her where the Tylenol was. Merchant says that as Miller stands up to point to where the Tylenol was, her 2-year-old son slips from her lap. Patel says he tried to help stabilize the toddler. Miller alleged something different in that 911 call.
I was in the Walmart and I had to rip my baby out of some other man's hands because he was trying to snatch him.
After that, the video shows Patel walking off, and he's later seen approaching Miller one more time to show her that he found the Tylenol. She appears to give him a thumbs up.
I'm surprised that she would describe it as someone trying to take her child because it's so obvious that it wasn't.
Now, almost 45,000 people have signed a Change.org petition calling for justice for Patel.
And what was his original reaction when he got arrested? Because he probably did not see that coming at all.
He was shocked. He could not believe it. Angry.
Hasmukh Patel has been friends with Mahendra Patel for almost 40 years. He's been talking to him on the phone every day from jail.
He cannot believe it that he is in for the things that he did not commit.
The Acworth Police Department did not respond to NBC's request for an interview, but we went to the Cobb County District Attorney's office and a spokesperson told us there's a lot more to the story, but because it's a pending investigation, we can't comment. For now, Merchant and Patel's friend says he's angry but is willing to fight these charges until he can clear his name.
I mean, imagine being in jail knowing you didn't do something and then having a video that shows you didn't do anything, but hearing that your government is still going to keep you in jail, that's very disheartening.
Our thanks to Priya Sridhar for that report. Now to a scary incident outside of actress Jennifer Aniston's Los Angeles mansion. Law enforcement sources tell NBC News a man was detained after ramming a vehicle into the front gate of the Friends star's home while she was there. For more, let's bring in NBC News correspondent Liz Kreutz, who's in L.A. Liz, good morning.
Hey, Joe, good morning. Yeah, law enforcement sources tell NBC News that Aniston was inside when this all unfolded. It's still unclear what led to this incident, but sadly, it is not the first security issue Aniston has faced at one of her homes.
This morning, authorities investigating a terrifying close call at the Los Angeles home of Jennifer Aniston. Two law enforcement sources familiar with the incident tell NBC News a man drove his vehicle into the front gate of the Friend-Star's Bel Air mansion and that Aniston was inside the home when it happened.
Security has the suspect at gunpoint.
Adding, Aniston's private security guards quickly jumped into action, detaining the man until police arrived. According to the sources, the unidentified driver was described as a middle-aged white male. It was not immediately clear why he crashed into the gate. But the frightening ordeal, not the first time Aniston has faced a security scare at one of her homes. Back in 2005, while Aniston was out of town, a man took a taxi to a rented Malibu home, climbed over a fence, and broke into the property. He was eventually confronted by Aniston's employees. The actress also obtained a restraining order against a suspected stalker who in 2010 was prowling around areas in LA he thought she frequented while carrying a sharp object, duct tape, and love letters addressed to Aniston. Monday's incident reminiscent of other security scares at the homes of A-list stars like Taylor Swift. In 2018, a man allegedly obsessed with the pop superstar broke into her Manhattan apartment, even taking a shower and sleeping in her bed. Thankfully, Swift not at home at the time, but actress Sandra Bullock was at her home when a man broke into her Los Angeles mansion in 2014, forcing her to hide in a closet as she called 911. Aniston lives in a sprawling $21 million mid-century modern mansion featured in Architectural Digest. The 56-year-old morning show actress not commenting on this latest frightening incident just outside.
Now, according to law enforcement sources, the suspect and the man is being treated at a local hospital following the crash. Authorities have not yet identified him or said what charges may be involved here, guys.
All right, Liz, thank you.
Coming up, some promising health news this morning, specifically for older adults.
Yeah, after the break, we're going to dive into a new study revealing a potential link between the shingles vaccine and a lower risk of dementia. The doctor is in next.
All right, we are back with some potentially welcome news for the health of older adults.
Yeah, a new study shows adults under 80 who received the shingles vaccine, they were 20% less likely to develop dementia in the 7 years after vaccination. Also revealed that the protective effect of the vaccine was stronger in women.
All right, joining us now with more on this is NBC News medical contributor Dr. Natalie Azar. So, good morning. Why does the shingles vaccine prevent against dementia?
Well, there's a couple of theories as to why. So I think one thing that the way I like to frame it is that there are going to be virus-dependent and virus-independent mechanisms. So virus-dependent, it means that the virus can directly cause neuroinflammation. Independently, when you have the vaccine, you sort of trigger this very, very robust immune response that could be somehow what we call neuroprotective. And then the other thing is that shingles can increase. There's a good body of evidence that it increases the risk of heart attack, heart failure, including stroke, and stroke is a risk factor for dementia. So those are the couple hypotheses as to why it could be prevented.
And there was a gender differentiation here, too.
There was a gender difference, right. So women were more likely to benefit in terms of reducing the risk of dementia. And you say, well, why is that happening? Women are tend to have a much more robust response to vaccination. And women are also 1.5 times more likely to develop shingles. So if you're going to see a benefit, it's likely going to be more pronounced in the group that is more likely to develop the disease.
I think you touched on this, but do we have an idea of how exactly the vaccine potentially does lower the risk for dementia?
Yeah, like I said, it's one of those things where I think investigators or researchers aren't going to say definitively that this is why. But for example, we know that the virus, when it triggers the risk of heart disease, it can upset your blood vessels. It can cause clot formation. It can cause inflammation in the blood vessels and cause blood vessel injury. We know that something like, for example, vascular dementia, the same risk factors exist for that exist for heart disease. So it's a combination of what is sort of inherent to the virus as well as the vaccination itself.
The study also shows that people over the age of 80 are not eligible to get this vaccine. I'm wondering why is that and when people should. They recommend 50, right?
Right. So what was was interesting about this study was that it was performed, up to about 10 years ago at a time when the vaccine was not as widely available as it is now. And this study was performed in Wales, and they decided to perform kind of a natural experiment. 80 was the cutoff at the time. So they gave the vaccine to people who were 79 and compared it to people who were 80 who never got the vaccine. But here in this country, and by the way, the vaccine they used in this study was what's called a live vaccine. We don't use that one here anymore ever since 2017 when the inactivated vaccine was approved. So the recommendation for us is 50 and older, or if you're 19 and immunocompromised, you're a candidate to get the vaccine.
If you are over 80, what are some of the options, or what are the things you should be doing just to increase your odds of having health and not worrying about dementia so much?
Yeah, well, so it's the same things that we talk about for heart health will be applicable again to people over the age of 80. That includes a healthy anti-inflammatory Mediterranean diet, getting enough exercise, sleep, limiting alcohol, not smoking, all of those things, again, risk factors that we commonly think of as associated with heart disease, but also increase the risk of dementia.
All right, Dr. Azar, thank you so much. All right, let's go dig a little deeper into how Barbie and some of your other favorite toys from Mattel are going to be affected by the White House's tariff push.
Yeah, we talked about this a little earlier. CNBC's Savannah now is here with more on that and some other financial headlines. Savannah, good morning.
Joe, Christine, good morning. Yeah, well, Mattel says that it will have to raise prices for some products sold here in the U.S. to offset higher costs related to President Trump's tariffs. Now, Mattel says this is necessary, even though it is speeding up plans to diversify its supply chain away from China. The president has imposed 145% tariffs on most Chinese-made goods. China accounts for 40% of Mattel's production. The company still expects about half its toys will cost customers $20 or less. The Federal Trade Commission releasing more details on its new rule banning hidden fees for live events, hotels, and short-term rentals. The rule, which takes effect May 12th, will also ban practices such as bait-and-switch pricing and any actions concealing the total price and fees. The rule impacts live event ticket sellers and short-term lodging providers such as hotels, motels, and Airbnb. Third-party platforms, resellers, and travel agents are also covered. Dynamic pricing is still allowed as long as the pricing information isn't misleading. And Microsoft announcing a new remastered version of an iconic video game franchise. It's launching Gears of War Reloaded for Xbox, PlayStation, and PC in August for $40. Now, the game will also be available to stream through Xbox Cloud Gaming. The Gears of War franchise will celebrate its 20th anniversary next year. It's sold more than 41 million copies worldwide, guys.
Sounds popular. All right. Thanks, Savannah. Appreciate it. Coming up, we can't end the hour without spilling the tea on fashion's biggest night.
That's right. After the break, we're bringing you all of the highlights, all of the hottest looks, and even some surprises from last night's Met Gala right here in NYC. Stay with us. That's next.
Finally, this hour, we must talk about the biggest night of the year for the fashion industry. Celebrities don their most iconic looks at the 2025 Met Gala here in New York. This year's theme, Superfine, tailoring black style, to honor the historical influence that black people, especially black men, have had on decades of fashion styles and culture.
This year, a record $31 million was raised for the Metropolitan Museum of Art's Costume Institute. Our friend Today Show co-host Al Roker was at the star-studded event, even got the stamp of approval from the style queen herself, Vogue editor-in-chief Anna Wintour.
Do you approve of the outfit? Is that okay?
It looks fantastic.
It's custom Valentino with Boucheron jewels.
Pinstripe pearls, that's the jacket. It's over 15,000 pearls.
Wow.
It's a celebration of the greatness of black style.
I've been watching my uncles and my dad be dandy my entire life.
I think it allows us to play in the fashion spaces that we don't usually get let into.
I was going to do the top hat.
Were you going to do the top hat?
I was, and I was going to do the tails.
Fashion has always played a huge part of my career.
Did you have to do any gymnastics to get into this?
It felt like it with the amount of hands and stuff.
Tip of the hat, and to all, a good night.
He looks great. Let's get more on last night's Met Gala with the New York Times chief fashion critic and fashion director, Vanessa Friedman. Vanessa, I'm sure you didn't probably get a lot of sleep because you were busy covering this last night, so thanks for joining us. I mean, first, just let's talk about the theme here. For someone who doesn't know much about fashion, Black dandyism and this super fine theme. Talk about more how you sum up this year's theme for the Met Gala.
I mean, it was really a historical show for the Met, both because it was the first show in decades dedicated to menswear. Right? The last one was, I think, back in 2003. And it was the first show ever dedicated to designers of color. So this has been the culmination of 5 years of work on the part of curator Andrew Bolton, and he based it all on a 2009 academic book by the Barnard professor Monica Miller, which really looked at the way Black men have used fashion as a tool of liberation, starting when enslaved peoples were kind of dressed up by their owners. And then when they liberated themselves, they were able to take that finery and redefine it and use it as a way to declare their own identity. And then it traces that all the way up to today. So it's quite a powerful and very historical story that this show is telling.
Absolutely. And, you know, this event has a 77-year history. For that to be the first time you've seen this as the theme, why did it take so long, and how significant is the timing given, I think, the current cultural climate?
Yeah, I mean, why is it taking so long for every industry to recognize, you know, a lot of the contributions of the Black community? That it could probably be, an entire hours and hours and hours worth of discussion. But, you know, I think what most people who were at the event, I think, felt was important was that it actually had finally happened. And it felt particularly resonant given what's happening politically in this country right now, given the executive orders coming out of Washington, you know, particularly vis-a-vis cultural institutions like the Smithsonian, the National Gallery, really insisting that, like, race be taken out of a consideration for their programming. I mean, here you have a show that is entirely programmed on the basis of race, really. And so it's kind of transformed the Met into, you know, like the Harvard of culture. Right, like the resistance.
That's an interesting way to put it. Let's talk about the looks, because that's why so many people were watching last night. Of course, we had Rihanna's baby bump. That was a highlight of the night. What were some of your favorite looks from the blue carpet?
I got to say, Diana Ross, to me, you know, yes. Gala Anthony said, "You are the Met." And I did think she was the Met. You know, that's just an 18-foot train. But what was so beautiful about it, it was embroidered on the underside with all the names of her children and grandchildren, which really, you know, spoke to this idea of heritage and history that the theme of the exhibit and the evening represents.
What about the guest list this year? A coveted invitation. Were there any surprises, any snubs?
Well, I got to say, so the guest list is a very tightly controlled secret. It is really administered by Anna Wintour. She decides who gets to come and who doesn't. It's not revealed until the actual night of the event. The big surprise to me was the presence of Kamala Harris, who in fact avoided the red carpet entirely, entered around a sort of side entrance to go to the party. And then one of the absences, which we knew was going to happen, was, of course, Mr. Trump, who in 2017, Anna said was the one person she would never invite back to the party.
We have 15 seconds here, but because this was about Black men's fashion, what was your favorite men's look of the night?
God, there were so many. That's very hard to choose. But I do think Coleman Domingo, who was a co-chair, he really got the message.
Yeah, two fantastic looks there. He's such a stylish guy. All right, Vanessa Friedman, we appreciate your time this morning. Thank you so much for joining us.
Nice to talk to you.
I feel underdressed right now.
I know.
I'm a little underdressed.
We need a little more sparkle.
Plain black,
right.
sorry.
That's going to do it for this hour of Morning News Now.
The news continues right now.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app, or follow us on social media.